Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Hotsport. It is a very early Tuesday edition for me, midweek edition of Anton's Tears, because we've got games going on tomorrow already. Didn't even have time to get the committee together. I was at work in the office yesterday. Committee just wasn't available to show up this early on in the week. That's how quick things are going. They'll be back. We'll assess, post this. The committee will be back, and we'll probably have an introduction then. But for now, we've got so much to talk about that happened this weekend. Arsenal against Chelsea obviously went head-to-head. They ended up with a 1-1 draw, so the ramifications of that. Guys, we're going to discuss everything. We're going to rank all 20 teams in the Premier League. Coming up right now, right here. It's time. Let's go. Anton's Tears. Anyway, it is time for Anton's Tears, midweek tears, guys. And before we get anywhere, make sure you're hitting the like button. Make sure you're subscribing to Hotsport. You see I'm behind with the tree, by the way. If there are any issues with the sound, I'm actually recording in my living room. The dishes are going on right now, not to give you too much of an insight, so bear with me through some of the noise. By the way, I forgot to put my overlay on. Snowy overlay. We are now in December, which means, yeah, everything's going to be snowy Christmas themed, even though, let's be fair here, in Australia, it doesn't snow in December. It actually doesn't snow really ever, except unless you're going to certain mountainous areas. Anyway, you guys don't really care about that. What you do care about is Anton's Tears. Anyway, making sure you hit the like button. Make sure you're subscribing to Hotsport, guys. We've grown. I'm really happy with the subscribe count. Recently, the views count recently has gone up and up and up. So yeah, we're upwards and onwards and upwards. And of course, your boy is getting thrown under the bus in some other networks at the moment, because people take what I say out of context, to be quite honest. But you know what? It's good. We're here to rank the tiers, and you're going to hear what Anton really has to say. But let's start with the bottom row, shall we? Are they dead yet? I mean, at some point, we're going to have to just take Wolves off the tiers, because it's getting crazy at this point. Like, one thing I'll tell you, right? They didn't get battered this week. They lost away from home at Villa Park, which general for Wolves isn't like shameful to happen. And oh, by the way, it was a Chimera wonder strike. But one thing I'll tell you is bad teams find ways to lose games, and that is what Wolves continuously do. And they continue to get outclassed. They continue to get outmatched. I don't know what else I can say at this point other than, you know, this overlay is actually, it's like blocking my face. Maybe I'll just take the overlay off. Yeah, so nothing much else to say at this point. Moving up, pesky potential. So, firstly, I gotta say, big ups to Fulham, because Fulham went away to Tottenham, as I said in Upset Alert. It was the only Upset Alert that I actually got right this weekend, and they beat Spurs, and they went 2-0 up in doing so, and they were resolute. Yeah, Spurs got themselves back into the game, but you know, Marco Silva put together a tremendous game plan. Now, in most weeks, would I pick Fulham to beat a team like Spurs? Probably not. To beat a team like Man United or City or Liverpool or Chelsea or Arsenal? Probably not. But despite that, there are weeks where they can creep up on you. They can be pesky. And this was one of them. And I kind of saw it coming, especially when it comes to London rivals. Fulham tend to up their games, home or away, actually. Like, Arsenal have struggled even at home at times against Fulham. Like, it's just the type of team they are. So, yeah, would I rank them highly overall? No. But can they? This is the Premier League. Like, they're one of those teams that can cause trouble. And up come Man City to Craven Cottage. Do I think that they're going to get anything out of City? Most likely not. But would I be surprised if they got something, a draw? No, I wouldn't be surprised. That's sort of like That's sort of kind of how Fulham are. And speaking of Man City, valiant Leeds. They went down within a minute, really, within 2 minutes of the kickoff, thanks to Phil Foden, and City came right at them. And then City, again, from the set piece, double the lead within like 24, 25 minutes, right? But that beginning of the second half, right? Calvert-Lewin, they come right at you, gets one back, then all of a sudden it's 2-2, and they look like they're about to get into a draw. But, you know, Phil Foden popped up with the heroics for City. But let's make this less about City, because this is the Leeds part of the video. And all I'll say to this is that Leeds are also pesky. I mean, I thought that City could just blow it out of the water, and Leeds came to fight. You know, sometimes you're 2-0 down, you just get that one back and you get belief in, and that's kind of what happened with Leeds, and it shows you, like, they can be pesky. That's just what I would say. In like kind of that's the entire idea of this here. And then we got on to Burnley, and look, Burnley this week weren't pesky. In fact, I'd say that I don't know, because can I tell you, at one point, that when they got that penalty back and it was 1-1 with about like 5 minutes to go maybe in the game, they were right there. The scoreline 3-1 is a little bit flattering for Brentford, because I think they were in a little bit of a sticky situation. Excuse me. I got a little bit of a cold recently. I think it's all the weather changes here and the amount of nights I spend waking up in the middle of the night to watch and cover this league. Yeah. Yeah, we're turning around midweek. Anyway, back to Burnley. Yeah, I thought they were into this game right at the end. Like, at the end, you know, I think just Brentford got the moments that they needed to end up winning the game. They got the second and they got the third. But again, right there, a lot of teams, I think they play better at Brentford than a lot of the bigger sides did this year. Now, the scoreline looks similar, but the scoreline is a little bit deceiving. So yeah, again, these teams are not quite any of the other teams in the league. They're two of them could potentially get relegated according to these tiers, but they also can be a pain in the ass to deal with for any of the other sides. Let's move on up next here. Settling down. And now what I'll say is, I'll actually look back. Matchweek 9, so this is what, Matchweek 14. The Matchweek 9 tiers, I had both Forest and West Ham at the bottom of the tiers. The managerial switches for both. Now the third one on for Forest. So again, the irony is that Forest and West Ham, obviously West Ham's manager was Forest manager when we kicked off the season, right? And then the Ange thing, I think, destabilized them. Sean Dyche has got them back. And look, I think they're just hard to describe the Brighton game overall. I'd say Brighton were clinical. Brighton were professional in certain points. I think they poked up with the moments that they needed. And Forest, I think the game was a little, again, similarly to the Burnley game, where like 2-0 flatters Brighton a little bit. Because I thought that, you know, Dyche's Forest, you know, they wouldn't embarrass themselves. I thought it was, look, I'm going to take a look at the stats there. Like, again, Forest had more of the ball, 51.9% of the ball. They had just about 19 shots to 17. They had 3 shots on targets, 9 corners they won. They just were not clinical. They were just a little bit wasteful in this one, but they're better than they were before. They were being battered week after week. They were losing their identity, and they've got their identity back now. So again, back-to-back wins. You know, you would have thought, I picked them for a home victory this week. They didn't quite do that, but still, I think they've improved. Sometimes, you know, everyone, like, sports is crazy, right? Everyone likes to judge everything in the microcosm of what did you just do recently. And you need to sort of have perspective to that. Forest were faltering. Forest, everything was slipping. I thought at one point Forest were in real danger of going down. I think now they've got their feet in the ground, I would be surprised if Forest were to go down from here on out. I think that they've got the solidity they need to kick on and get enough points into the belt to stay up this season and maybe regroup in the summer afterwards. That's what I would say overall about Nottingham Forest. And for West Ham, like, they're still better than they were, you know, earlier this year. Again, another team I picked an upset alert. I thought they could get something out of Liverpool. They've had an uptick. And again, they're playing Liverpool, and Liverpool finally woke up from their slumber at the inappropriate time for West Ham. Now, West Ham need to address the fact that they just keep getting battered by big teams at home. But again, that's one of the reasons why they're not higher up in the tiers. But I still think talent-wise, they're better than those four below them. I think they're starting to steady the ship. But again, they're going to get outshined by the teams like Liverpool in this world. Let's just be honest. But yeah, look, I think both of these teams have improved. There were times when both of these teams were in real threat of being relegated. And now I think the season is starting to come, you know, to more of a settled period. You know, they might have, you know, ups and downs, but I think their biggest downs are beyond both of these teams so far this season. Let's go up to the next tier, Little Bros. Now, a lot of guys will be like, oh, Sunderland, you know, they got a win this week against Bournemouth, come from behind win. You know, why are they so low down the tiers? I mean, Everton were absolutely smashed at home by Newcastle. But here's the overall theory behind these, right? And it's, again, a mixture of how they've done so far, who they've played against, who they're going to play against, how I project them to go out the rest of the year. A lot goes into these tiers. And by the way, this week, it was me and me alone. The committee didn't have time to group up for this week games. But yeah, welcome to the winter schedule, to the December fixture conjecture. And so we're going to have some of these, I think, as well, moving on throughout the year. And of course, you know, my committee members can start to go away on holiday, want to spend time with their family. So this is purely me. And my Sunderland thing. So by the way, brilliant. And it was a little bit similar shades of the way the Arsenal game goes. And again, as I said, I think Sunderland are really tough to beat at home. I actually picked them to win the game against Bournemouth. I did. But I still see, number one, like a week before they lost to Fulham. So I think there's a bit of an inconsistency starting to creep in here. There's a little bit of that. They're not as quality as some of the others that's creeping in here. That's what I would kind of say as well. And, but yeah, again, I think they've been very mildly impressive. And this is a lot higher up the tiers than I would have expected them to be. Now, again, this is not the table, as I keep saying every single week when we get to the Sunderland part. I still sort of think that things are gonna trickle down and they're gonna kind of like, they're gonna fall into place. And by the end of the year, this is gonna be about where they are. They're not quite top half, but also not quite down at the bottom where I think a lot of people may have expected them to be. And I think they've got too much talent. They acquired too much talent in the summer for them to be in the relegation spaces. In terms of Everton, and what I will say to this right now is how could they go away to Old Trafford, get a win against Man United away, and then play a Newcastle team that has not won back-to-back games all year and get thoroughly pumped? But what I will say in the defense of Everton is, like, sometimes, you know, you win and you lose, and sometimes it's like, when you look at it through one lens, it's like, oh, Everton was so bad. That would probably be the Everton fan lens or the Liverpool fan lens. But the other side of this is the Newcastle side. And when we move on to Newcastle, I will give them praise because obviously they need it. And I've been critical of their inconsistency this year. But first of all, Newcastle's just starting to get healthy a little bit, and this has been coming for a while. I think that their talent and their performances overall have been better than the results. And this is sort of a culmination, I felt, of Newcastle clicking into gear at an inappropriate time for Everton, is the way I would put that. Overall, this is where they probably will stand in the league when all things are said and done? Yes. And I think Everton and Sunderland, again, little bros. So, Everton were outdone by Sunderland's big bro in Newcastle. And Sunderland are, what they are at home, which is they have some good games. Those, like, Sunderland fans have been treated to some really, really exciting and entertaining games with some good drama. And that is what I will say to them this far in the season. All right, moving on. Up next. Again, I feel like this is the same tier now, like consistently almost every week, although we've got like ups and downs, little additions to it. What was this last week? Was it the same teams? No, see, a little bit different. So Brighton has been replaced by Newcastle on this tier. They're tricky assignments, these teams. And when I say tricky assignments, I'm not talking about the teams you already see on this screen. I'm talking about for the teams you have yet to see on this screen. These are teams that most of the teams above them would expect to win, especially at home. But when they go away to these grounds, boy, they know they're into it for a tough game. Go to Villa Park, that is difficult. Go to Vitality Stadium in Bournemouth, that's difficult. Brentford has been a giant slayer at the G-Tech this year. And Newcastle, by the way, just a reminder, just beat City at home last week. And they've come down to the wire with both Arsenal and Liverpool as well so far this year. And big up to Newcastle. Back-to-back wins. I've been asking for it the whole year, and they did it. So credit to them. I think this was a very, very key point of the season. And I think they can kick on from here. Because up next, I believe tomorrow, I think it's the game tomorrow, they're going to host Tottenham. And I think that's in their wheelhouse. Like, playing some of these big teams at St. James's Park is the wheelhouse. And I think that's a tremendous, the type of where both Tottenham and Newcastle games our seasons are going right now. Sorry. It's going to be really interesting to see where this goes, because Newcastle has already knocked Spurs out of the cup as well, right? This isn't the first time they've played each other this year. And I really fancy Newcastle. I think Tottenham are in trouble a little bit. And you're going to start to see them, maybe these two teams, switch places a little bit in terms of their form. And for Brentford, look, it was a bit of a battle there with Burnley at the end, but you got to say, their quality is a lot higher than I assumed that they would be at the start of the year. I had them as the 18th ranked side, talent-wise, in the Premier League. And I think I might have to amend that. By the way, Igor Thiago is better than I thought he would be. 10 goals so far. The 10 goals or 11 goals now so far this season. I think he's on 11 goals now this season. I think the penalty was his 10th, and then the winner was the 11th, right? Outside of Erling Haaland, this is the most informed striker in the Prem. So out goes Ivan Toney a year and a half ago, almost. Oh, a year, yeah. And they brought in Igor Thiago. Now, he had injury issues last season. But now, he's gotten himself, a regular run of games in the team, and he looks damn good. Brentford's talent IQ, of course, by necessity has to be high, and they bring in some really good players. Another one they acquired that was really good came from the team that's next to them, Dengo Ouattara. He also scored. He finished it off. He's been really good. Arsenal's going to play Brentford this week, and we are going to have to watch out for Ouattara. Now, luckily, I believe he's going to be on the Timber side of the pitch. So I do feel like we have the right solutions for that problem. But, and of course, the fact that it's at the Emirates and not at the G-Tech is a big thing. But yeah, I'm starting to pick Brentford almost on a weekly basis at home because I think they are a really, really, really good home side. And Bournemouth again, Semenyo came back in. They were 2-0 up, and we got to have some conversations now because now I think that's 4 games without victory now for Bournemouth. Things are sliding down. I had them, and maybe it was premature, to be honest. A lot of people think I'm premature in some things. That could be true. I think some I'm going to get right, some I'm going to get wrong. I think this might be one of the ones that I got wrong, which is that I thought they might end up being in Europe this year. It's starting to slide down the table. Let's say they lose a Semenyo, by the way, in a month from now. Things are starting to look a little bit dark for Bournemouth. At the moment, though, they are what they are, which I still believe a team that you're not going to want to have to face as one of the tough, higher teams up in the table. Like, I know, for instance, Chelsea are going to have to go to the Vitality this weekend. I think that's going to be tough. Not this game, but the game after that. But yeah, Everton at home, they're going to have back-to-back home games against Everton, against Chelsea. I think Everton especially is a great opportunity for them to stabilize. Everton, I think, are licking their wounds, and it's a chance now, I think, for Bournemouth and for Villa now. They are now top 4 in the table. Wow. But man, they fucking haven't looked so good. I'm sorry to drop the F-bomb here recently. Like, they've struggled with 2 teams at the bottom part of the tiers here. Probably the worst teams in the tiers. Wolves and Leeds. They need to come back from behind. They need 2 magical free kicks from Morgan Rogers, and they need a wonder strike to beat Wolves. What I'm seeing right now with Villa is a little bit of a vulnerability that I saw early on in the year, which is like they're struggling to produce offense. Now they produced it, and they settled themselves. They moved themselves up, but now they're kind of needing a little bit of moments of magic to get themselves out of trouble against teams that aren't really great. Like, coming up for them, by the way, for Villa, they got Brighton away, and then they get Arsenal on the weekend. They're gonna have to. Those teams are not Leeds or Wolves. They're gonna have to raise their levels in order to get anything out of those games. Just my feelings. But again, these are all tricky assignments for any of the teams above, and it is what it is. Let's move up to the next tier, shall we? Birds of a feather, we can stick together. I forgot who's the artist who wrote Birds of a Feather. By Billie Eilish. Shout out to Billie Eilish. Yeah, that's right. Come on. It's just sometimes names pop out of my head. Shout out to Billie Eilish. Birds of a Feather. Yeah, the seagulls, the eagles, the chicken on a ball, all there and thereabouts in the same category right now in this season. Tottenham are sliding. Like, let's start off with Spurs, because let's take a look at some of their recent form, shall we? This weekend, 2-0 down to Fulham at home. Okay, they got one back. L. Last week got smashed up by Arsenal. We don't need to speak that much about that. L. At home, draw with Man United. Again, you're supposed to be beating Man United at home if you're a team that's serious. At home, lost to Chelsea. Their last victory was a 3-0 away at the Hill Dickinson. I remember that was the one, and they had like a bunch of corners, like I think 2 from Mickey Van de Ven or something like that. But they are starting to fall. They are starting to fall, and they have things get even easier now. Like, things weren't bad, but already they have to go to St. James's Park, right? And then the Bees, again, another London rival, come into town, and again, I said they're a tricky assignment. Then they have to go to Forest. Then they play Liverpool. Like, this festive period is going to be a bit like some of those games. I think they might end up winning or picking up points in, but it's a tricky little holiday schedule now for Spurs. In the games leading up to that, I felt they have slid, and it's not a good way when you start going into the icy period, because you might start to slide on ice even more. If I was Tottenham Hotspur, in terms of Crystal Palace, I was shocked. I was surprised. But I would say that is more Man United showing up than it was negative on Palace. I think Man United's form in the past, as I said, they had some demons they needed to slay. And that was on United. And it looked early like, Palace, Mateta scores, and all things was as usual. But again, home loss to Man United. But again, I'm not going to make it a negative thing on Palace overall. I think right now this is about where they rank in terms of their talent, how well coached they are, how generally it is hard to go to Selhurst Park and win. So we're going to big up Man United when we get there. But do I think that Palace will bounce back and continue probably on a similar form that they've had all year? Yeah, look, they got Burnley next. But that's going to be a win. And then who do they have after that? Fulham away. That's going to be interesting. London derby, but that could be one that they could win. And they're going to be a tricky test for Man City who come to town. But that of course that's harder than the other ones. But again, you see sort of the games where they'll win, they'll draw, they'll lose. Leeds, after that. I think this is right thereabouts. Is that the consistency of a top 10 team? Like that's what sometimes I feel people are maybe people aren't talking much about Palace because maybe that is what really all think. But when you don't have title expectations or even top 4 expectations, I think we can sort of shove some of these things on the rug. For me to say that it's a disappointment to lose to Manchester United, I think takes things overall in the history of football out of perspective just a tad. But I think that right here is just about right. Now, for Spurs, on the other hand, it's embarrassing that they have the consistency of a Crystal Palace or a Brighton. But take a step back even further than that, last season they were 17th, and Brighton and Palace were way ahead of them in terms of their consistency. So take it for what it is. Brighton Hove Albion, impressed that they went away to Forest, who have found some form, and they got it done. I kind of count them out sometimes in away games, and I think they're a home team mostly. But the fact that they took care of that assignment, and this is going to be a tasty game this week against Villa, one that I expect is in the wheelhouse of a Brighton, a Villa coming to the Amex. I think that's exactly what Brighton, I think it's exactly the way what works for Brighton, to be honest, at this point in time. I think so. Anyway, next up, let's start getting into the big boys now. Need to kick on. Now I gotta give a full congratulations to both these sides. Because if you watched Under Pressure last week, I was talking about Man United being so under pressure because of the result, because of that Everton game, and the fans were starting to get a little bit anxious again. They went and they slayed the dragon. They went to Selhurst Park. They slayed the dragon. Congratulations. And for Liverpool, Slot can breathe a little bit, because I feel like if they had lost that one, that would have been his head. Now that they've done that one, right? And by the way, congratulations, Alexander Isak. I'm going to say that a lot on the videos today. Got yourself your first Premier League goal. It only took you, up until Matchweek 13 to do it? Got one. Well done, my friend. But, Liverpool, it was one of those games, look, it wasn't scintillating, but they were professional, they took care of business, and they were steady. But now, what they need to do now is start to build momentum. Sunderland come to town. Let's get a win there if I'm Liverpool, you know? Then you got to go to Leeds. You got 2 promoted sides back to back. Go get a win there. You right? Then, well, who's up for them? Brighton at home. Again, that's a team that has been tricky for Liverpool in the past. At that point, though, you got maybe 3 wins in a row. Let's see if you can make it 4. Then, you know, you go to Tottenham. Tottenham has been vulnerable at home. By match week 17 or 18, by the time we hit to the middle of the year, by Christmas time, I think we will forget the whole Arne Slot narrative if they do what they should be. But right now, if you noticed, they are about on the 3rd tier now. So it's not like, you know, my expectations for them are where they used to be. No way at all. But I think we're kind of exhausted in talking about that storyline, because I think that's kind of gone and happened, and you've had to reevaluate what your new goals are for the season. But it's a good start. They just needed something to end the rot. Now they got to kick on. And that's what I say for both of them. For United as well, right? Like, you got West Ham at home, at Old Trafford. That should be food. Right? Let's start, you know, getting some results together. Let's start. Then you got freaking Wolves. That's a percentage booster, right? Then you got Bournemouth at home. Now, of course, again, another team that's tricky. But I think there's somewhere around the idea of what they did with Sellers Park. But again, it's still at home. But Man United have lost somewhere at home. Then you got the Villa one, which is always a tough one. But, you know, you don't have to win all those games. But look competent, look stable, win majority of them. You know, it's sort of that idea of like, let's take a look at 4 games. If you can get, let's say, I'll say what would be fair, right? Of the next 12 points from Man United, 12 potential points. 3 points against West Ham would be my expectation. 3 points against Wolves would be my expectation. With Bournemouth, maybe a draw. And with Villa, maybe a draw or defeat. But let's say a draw. Let's say you get 8 points from your next 12 from Man United. I think that's good. They weren't doing stuff like that last year. I just have to be frank when it comes to that. Let's bring the snowy background back. I don't know why. Let's just gotta, let me see the feels. As we go on to the next tier. Blue Believers. Now, I gotta say, I gotta be humble. Well done to Chelsea. I could only observe what I have observed. And Chelsea was the toughest Premier League team we played this year. Truly. We played Liverpool at Anfield. I know we lost that game, but I felt like Liverpool were there for the taking in that one. I felt, we were unlucky. I wasn't uncomfortable. City at home, for majority of that game, I know we went behind, but I'm just like, come on, Arsenal. You can do so much better. We got an equalizer, but I always felt like they were there for the taking. Chelsea, on the other hand, everything that could have gone wrong went wrong, and yet they still held on for the point. Now, it comes at the end of, I will do, by the way, go to Fire Them Cannons. We're going to have an episode tonight. I will properly go through that game and pick that one apart. But what I would say from a Chelsea point of view is, look, I don't get why your fans are like freaking celebrating like you won the game and being like, hold that. I'm like, what am I holding? Well done. I said it's going to take a really, really, really good performance from Chelsea. And they had a point to prove, and they somewhat proved it, because I thought it was, again, the toughest game, bar Sunderland, which is interesting, right? But I think with Chelsea, there's a little bit of that more respect factor, which I know that they've got some of the qualities. And they went down to 10 men, and I think they weathered a little bit of the storm. Martinelli could have scored early on in that period, and it would have really set Arsenal on our way, but we didn't. And they got into the locker room and they were like, how the hell, what do we do? And they basically took the ball, got themselves a set piece, got themselves a corner, scored, and had something to hang on to. Had something to hold on to, and then from then on it was up to Arsenal. And we got our goal that we needed, but they made it tough. We did create chances, and I feel like little details kind of just were a little bit off what Arsenal needed to execute to get that winning goal. But Chelsea were well done, and Reece James, he was like, that's one thing I'll say. This is what I'll say, right? Overall, to sum up Chelsea. We played 10 men, but it felt like it was 11v11 still. And that is massive praise, I think, for me onto Chelsea. And I do believe, by the way, what is this tier? Second tier from the top. This is a title contenders, not favorites, contenders tier. And I do believe I've laughed it off in the past. I have upgraded them to this tier now because I do believe now that they are contenders, challengers for the Premier League title. Right? I said this yesterday on the terrace. I said it to Quest. I apologize to a few of the Chelsea fans. More for the disrespectful slander than anything else. Do I think they're going to win the league? No. Do I think they're anywhere near as good as Arsenal? Still no, because I think there was a lot of context that needs to get into any single game. And Chelsea happened to be the third game in a massively tough week. It's a little bit of equivalent of the Sunderland game. Like, they were the third game in 3 away games. This was the third game in a tough week where Arsenal really played 100% against both Spurs and Bayern. And a little bit of that energy came out of the tank. Of course, Gabriel and Saliba were out. But anyway, I'm not gonna do that right now. We'll get to that when we get to Arsenal. Big up Chelsea. Big up Chelsea for that one. Man City, guys. Man City did something this weekend that they did when they were winning titles. And that is when it looks like things are about to go south, they found a moment of brilliance. And Foden was that in the season after the treble, the one where, we took them all the way to the end. He was the one who popped up in the big moments, and he did it again here. He actually popped up in the winner. He popped up at the end. Criticism I have for City is they totally got very complacent against a Leeds team that they thought they were going to run away from. They jumped out to an early quick start, and in that second half, it's sort of like they thought we were going to cruise to the win. And Everton caught them Leeds caught them napping. The only reason I said Everton is because it was Calvert-Lewin, I think, really was the igniter for that. But yeah, as I said earlier, I think Leeds did a good job to bring themselves back. But from the City point of view, like Nehemiah scores, Nemecha scores, equalizes the game. And like, it's a little bit Liverpoolish from earlier in the year when they were 5 from 5. So that's what I'm saying. There's still a little bit of vulnerabilities about City. But again, Arsenal showed their cracks this week too. So we had to be fair when all is fair. Do I think with Pep Guardiola, with the likes of Erling Haaland, with if Rodri they get back, will they be contending for the title? Absolutely. And that's why I say blue believers. Both of these teams, I would take your expectations a little bit down. Wait in the weeds, see what Arsenal does, because that's sort of the job that you have right now in the season. But is there a little bit of hope? Absolutely. Would I consider you guys the title contenders? Yes. And that is what this tier is. But at the top of the tier, still the best, Arsenal. And yes, they did draw. And one thing a message I want to send to everybody here is, okay, the best teams, they're going to drop points every once in so often. But let's take a look at this week in totality. You smash Spurs. You smash Bayern. Okay, what the draw at the bridge is not that bad. And I was saying that to myself before the game. I'm like, you know what? I think it's set up well here, the way the table is, for that a draw not to be the worst thing in the world, because at least the gap doesn't close significantly to where there's a 3-point gap. Now, do I think that Arsenal should have done better given the fact that Chelsea were down to 10 men? 100% absolutely. That was the frustration I had with the game. That at that point, regardless of if Gabriel and Saliba were both gone, which I will get on to that part, regardless of that, Arsenal, the approach to being up by one man, I think was good at the start. Initially, right away, yeah, we got on the ball. We started, moving it around. We started trying to shuffle them around. And we had that Martinelli chance. But in the way we did it in the second half, the majority of it, I know we had the good response with Saka, good piece of brilliance to find Moreno for the equalizer, and it was resilience. But when you have the quality that Arsenal do, and this is, I've sort of a little bit perplexed a little bit at Arteta's substitutions here, because I feel like if Moreno comes off for Gyökeres rather than Eze, that also would have had Noni Madueke, Saka, Eze, Odegaard, right, with Rice in that midfield, and you got the killer Gyökeres up top. Arsenal could have just moved the ball about, shuffle Chelsea around, make them chase shadows until they get tired. Because Chelsea, at one hand, and this is the most frustrating thing, is Chelsea actually didn't really sit back low most of the game. They came at us for a team that was 10 men. I remember multiple times Pedro Neto coming down the wings, coming in and creating shots, creating chances. There were a few, I think, as well for Enzo in there as well. And Arsenal should have hit them on the break. Arsenal should have used the man advantage and capitalized on the fact that a 10-man team came out so much. And we just didn't do it. But in the context of the season, the fact that we went 1-0 down, that would have been a really bad look. We take the point, we maintain that 6-point gap. Yes, it's annoying that 7 becomes 5 with City, but do I think that Arsenal have the consistency for 5 to be a little bit comfortable? Yes. And do I think if Arsenal rebound, get wins against Brentford and Villa done this week, will it be sitting in a comfortable position? After that would be at 50 after 15 games. Do I think maybe the 5-point gap could expand? There's a potential for it. We'll see. Overall, who does City have coming up? Of course, I know they got Fulham, and then they have got Sunderland. I still think that City will pick up maximum points, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Sometimes you just keep the gap as it is. As weeks go on, the closer and closer and closer and closer you get to the end, the more substantial those gaps become. So again, as long as Arsenal pick up the points that I expect them to get, I think they should be fine. But again, yeah, Saliba and Gabriel being out, like the fact that Nkapie and Mosquera play for the first time this season, it kind of takes the spine out a little bit of Arsenal. And the fact that, by the way, there's so many yellow cards. So, like, you have a new center-back pairing. Both of them pick up a yellow. Calafiori picks up a yellow. By the way, he comes off. Lewis Kelly comes on. That was another sub that I just didn't get. Zubamendi being on a yellow card. So, like, you can't necessarily be as physical and challenging because all those players are walking on a tightrope. There's so much context to go into it, but you're going to sometimes have games like this. That's why it's nice to come into the day having a 7-point advantage over Man City into the weekend, because it allows you for some of these days sometimes to occur. Now, if it happens more often than not, we'll revisit this, but I just think that it's just one of those days, and Arsenal are still the best. Let's not again, as I said with Man United, right? 7 points out of 9 where you played Spurs, Bayern, and Chelsea in a week is not bad return for Arsenal. Anyway, those are my tiers for this week. Let me know what you guys think. Games are back tomorrow. We're gonna have a busy day here, by the way. Still to come on today. Under Pressure is gonna be back. So is Upset Alert. And then tonight, we are going to be doing Fire Them Cans with Cal. So hit the QR code. Get yourself subbed up. Get the notification bell turned on, because this should be a very interesting episode where me and Cal are going to revisit and break down what happened at Stamford Bridge and why we didn't come away with the 3 points in that game. But until then, guys, make sure you're hitting the like button, make sure you're subscribing, and I will see you later.